was pretty upset. And so it actually only added impetus to this effort to try to get a bill across the finish line. If a society doesn't have confidence in how its public officials are elected, then the very foundation of our constitutional republic is compromised. Like I said, this is a combination of 4 years of work. The goal is to restore the public's confidence in our unique and very sacred right to choose who our elected leaders are. Quite frankly, if you remember Iraq, when the Iraqi citizens for the first time in many, many years had the chance to vote freely, they were very proud when they all put their thumbs up to the camera where they had ink on them to show that they had the right to vote for the first time. This bill has gone through many iterations since it was filed last January or pre-filed. The latest version has been a very collaborative effort built around the concept of making it easy to vote and hard to cheat. One of the greatest challenges we have faced is that political spectrum that on one side, people want to make it very easy to vote, which can at times make it easier to cheat. On the other side, people that want to make it hard to cheat can pose challenges to those that want to make it easier to vote. So how do you find the balance? We've had a lot of polarized partisanship and a lot of accusations from both sides of what the other side is doing, and we decided it was time to move past that narrative and take a step forward. We took an approach to this bill over the last year and a half of looking for ways to strike that balance. For example, this bill addresses same-day voter registration. That wasn't on the easier to vote wish list. The operating principle was to ensure the voter provides sufficient proof they have an actual residence in that district for 30 days, sign an affidavit affirming so under penalty of perjury, and then they vote on a question ballot. Both sides were able to reach a consensus that this was acceptable. The metric makes it easier to vote and still hard to cheat, and we respectfully ask everyone at the table to apply this policy metric when considering whether they would look at amendments or their support for this bill. SB 39 strives to make the process open and transparent by being a national leader and embracing open source voting, a digital concept which eliminates proprietary hardware and software, allowing open access to the public to mitigate real or imagined concerns over digitally tainted results. Open source systems are never hooked up online, cell tower or wireless networks, and all equipment utilizes off-the-shelf hardware, trying to put the ballot machine arguments to rest we've heard so much about in the last year and a half. Over-registration of our voter rolls has been a consistent problem for Alaska, with an average of 40,000 people moving into the state and 40,000 people moving out of the state every single year. Several measures in SB 39 try to clean up those rolls. One is requiring the state to use more databases with better up-to-date information, requiring the state to educate and inform people who have moved to unregister. It's something we currently don't do. And then requiring a yearly report to the legislature, which will help us improve the accuracy of our voting rolls by informing us things that we may need to do legislatively to help fix that problem. Ballot chain of custody is another important area that's been happening across the country. We're a little late on that one. These protocols are strengthened and actually added in SB 39. For example, barcode tracking for ballots to maintain a more robust chain of custody when a ballot is out of the control of the Division of Elections, and provides a quick curing, which is something on the easier to vote wish list as well. That's been asked for many years, so that a voter would be able to correct a technical mistake that would otherwise disqualify their vote. Especially this applies to like online and absentee ballots. We usually kick out about 2 to 3% of those, and this would allow the option for people to cure those ballots so their vote still counts. Digital ballot tracking through a phone or online application will increase ballot chain of custody, and it provides us a forensic digital trail if there's ever the need for an audit. Many measures in the bill allow for easier voting opportunities, but we did increase stiff penalties for violating those voting laws, again, looking at that balance metric of easy to vote but harder to cheat, or painful if you do. Our voting laws are very complex, as this bill demonstrates. These are just a few of the examples of the effort, thought, and compromise put into the bill, but the principle remains. Reasonable people can disagree, but the bipartisan sponsors in each body, and that's something I want to highlight. I have been working for a year with a member in the other body, trying to find a way to make two bills essentially match so that we could bring those forward. And what has really happened here is that initially there was a kind of a right side of the political spectrum bill, a left side of the political spectrum bill, and realizing that neither one was going to pass the other body, we hope to find a way to get rid of the chaff, if you will, and leave the wheat, the important core concepts in the middle. And that's essentially what this bill is, between this bill and the work with the other body, to find a way to take a step forward that everybody could agree on and not worry about the things that we can't. That way we can at least work on things that come, for example, from the CISA or the Critical Infrastructure Security and Resilience, or the agency from the federal government, with some key findings. Compromises to the integrity of the state-level voter registration systems, the preparation of election data, Vote aggregation systems and election websites present particular risks to the ability of jurisdictions to conduct elections. When proper mitigations and incident response plans are not in place, cyber attacks on the availability of state or local systems that support same-day registration, vote center check-in, and provisional voting also have the potential to pose meaningful risk. This happened to us as well, Mr. Chairman. You remember we had 113,000 Alaskans' voter data was compromised. We had the recent HES data breach, and that information is still floating around. And these are things that we need to look at and how we can fix the system and make it tighter, and then account for those things so that people have the option, and our Division of Elections has the resources it needs to be able to fight these different problems, because this isn't going away. And this isn't just a Division of Election problem. This is a statewide problem for all agencies. And then I would finally note that if you look from 2016 to 2020, there were many reports and articles across the media that talked about the vulnerabilities in our election system. And after 2020, those mostly went away. But the point being that it isn't acknowledged by both the federal government with things that we need to do better, as well as the media, and even in our own state, that we have areas that we can certainly clean up and make the system better. And at the end of the day, as my closing comment for the statement, Mr. Chairman, is there used to be a day when we argued about what the results were. We didn't like them, but we trusted them. And this whole effort is really to get us back to that restoring faith in people in their election system. They may not like the results, work harder in the next election cycle, but we want everybody to trust the results. Thank you.
All right. Any questions of the bill sponsor before we move into Senator Stedman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Senator Showers, so are you referring to the national level and the potential lack of confidence or concerns over the last presidential election? Or are you referring to state elections?
Through the chair, sorry, it's been a while since I briefed. Through the chair, Senator Stedman, it really both, because that's a factor that it helped us look at why we would start the effort. And then as we started investigating what happened in the state and started talking to, for example, the Division of Elections Director and other people, the Permanent Fund Division, and how we automatically register people and send them across, we realized we had a lot of holes that we thought we could do better. So from the federal level investigation and the reports, what was in the mainstream media, and then all the way down to what happened at the state level, it's a collection of all of that information that kind of pushed us into this path of wanting to do this. I hope that answers your question. It might need more specifics.
Follow-up?
Mr. Chairman, I think at some point it would be nice to have the Division of Elections or Lieutenant Governor or somebody come before us and talk about the state elections, because my understanding is we really didn't have any significant problems in our state elections, and there's not a problem with our state elections. Everybody that was elected was duly elected. So I think we need to be careful how we talk about this subject matter, unless the Lieutenant Governor comes before us and says his election count is invalid and not any good. But that's not my understanding when he did the recounts.
I do have Gail Panumii from Division of Elections, Noah Klein, Legal Services, Thomas Flynn, Assistant Attorney General, available for questions as we go down this morning's meeting. Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Shower, are there any other states that have this type of a system in place that you're proposing for Alaska?
Through the chair, Senator Olson, just to be clear, which particular systems, because there's actually several things included in the bill.
I guess there are, but I was wondering, are these all throughout the other 49 states that are there?
Okay, through the chair, Senator Olson, not every state does all of these things. There is a smattering of this across the nation. What you're seeing is a move towards these systems as more states go for online, where we have things like the data breach, what we know is floating around. And I can say, for example, I know that data is out there. The latest brief about a week and a half ago from Lieutenant Governor's office told us that 103,000 people's information is still on the dark web. So if you say there's not, for people to say there's not a problem, there is. And I asked the Division of Elections Director on the record, what's the plan to make sure we cross-check those people, et cetera? There wasn't one. We're not going to do anything. So those are holes, those are vulnerabilities that somebody can use. That's also been acknowledged on the record, but you certainly can ask the division director about that. Other states like California, for example, have already enacted the ballot chain of custody. So they use the app. And it seems to be very successful for all of their online and absentee ballots, because what that allows is people can track it, as well as the state, where that ballot is the entire time in the process. When it comes back, the person themselves know where their ballot is. They know when it gets back and that it's been counted. And if there's a problem with it, they get instantly notified and they can cure their ballot. So yes, other states are doing it, not necessarily all of it, but the ballot chain of custody, the ballot tracking, and the open source software firmware is starting to take place in a number of states.
Last question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Olson?
As you look at some of the places that you don't have that capability of tracking them, particularly rural Alaska, what kind of inhibitions are we going to be facing there for making it harder for the elderly or those people that don't have online connections to the internet to be able to go ahead and vote?
Through the chair, Senator Olson, that's something that Lieutenant Governor and I had many discussions about. So you'll see in one portion of the bill, there's a provision that every entity that's below 750 people can pretty much do mail-in balloting, mail-out balloting, whatever they choose to do, because we're not going to be able to, they're too small, so we don't have the option to get officials, et cetera, to make it work. So the option will still be available for the state to mail out ballots there to help out with that. We haven't gotten rid of, for example, what would be called ballot harvesting, only made it illegal to bring people up and pay them. So you can still have family members or a caregiver that could help somebody that needs to get an absentee ballot, fill it out, and have it delivered. And the Lieutenant Governor may answer this if you have him at a different time, but he was very clear that many of the villages that talked to him, especially during the pandemic, did not trust the Postal Service. They don't trust it. And so they're very concerned about their ability to vote. So there is options, for example, to mass mail out in those communities. There's options for family members or others to help. And the state has quite a bit of flexibility in how they do that. So we're not changing that.
No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Willikowski?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing the bill forward. Can you explain the open source software concept to me and whether there are other states that use that and how that would work in our system?
Through the chair, thank you, Senator Willikowski. So open source, I'll start at the top level for the first part of the question, is what that means is currently, for example, the Dominion machines we use, the company has proprietary information. So anybody is limited from being able to look at the algorithms, the software, the data that comes out of it, and clearly voter information is prevented from being released. It has to be de-identified first. But when you go to an open source method, everything is available for everybody to see. So there's no hidden proprietary software, coding, et cetera. And that's the same in the bill for the off-the-shelf hardware, so that you have things like the actual tabulator machines that would be open source. Anybody could look at the algorithm. And then you would have off the shelf, which has to be in the bill because you're talking about things like printers, scanners, other things that are in a sense proprietary, but they're just used by the tabulator of the voting system. So the goal is to get us to a place where you have open source. And as I'm sure you've heard, there's been all kinds of conspiracies and other things about the Dominion machines, et cetera. There's 3 major companies in the US that do it. They have the ability to go open source if they choose. There are at least 3 other companies we're aware of. One of those is about to achieve federal certification that is all open source. And the push for that is to try to get to a point to have people to be open and transparent and restoring faith in the system. So the goal of this is to get us to a point where all of our information is able to be put out online. Everything about the algorithms is out there. There's nothing that is hidden. It's all above board. And then there are other states that are looking at this. However, right now, none of the big 3 companies do it. And none of the 3 that we're aware of that are working on it are certified yet, but they're very close with that. So, but in discussions with several other states, they're looking at the same software for the same reasons.
Follow up, Senator Willikowski.
Can you just explain the algorithms? Why would there be a need for algorithms in election software, and how does how does that all work with the system? I just don't understand that.
Through the chair, thank you, Senator Willikowski. So not being just a pilot and not a computer expert either, I'll do my best, but we might have to ask for a lifeline for somebody that's a little smarter on this particular topic. But each of the tabulator machines has its own software. And in that software, it determines how it, for example, communicates, how it tabulates, how it runs the system, and then collects all the information and puts it into its individual bins. And then the same thing, that software is so, I guess I could do it from a plane analogy. So I have all the hardware, I have an F-22, and I've got all the computer boxes and everything in there, but they're by themselves, they don't mean anything, they don't do anything. You have to have the software that runs the individual systems. So I guess in a way I could explain it. that software is what makes it run, and that's the coding that runs the radar. That's the coding that runs the radar warning receiver, the engines, the flight controls. So it's, in essence, a tabulating machine is the same thing. It has to have that software. Currently, there's been a lot of allegations and other things, and quite frankly, some of it has been proven is from the sense of experts that the machines have been hackable, they have been hacked, and that the information, and they weren't supposed to be connected to the internet, but we know that it happened. And so that allows for any, as the cyber IT experts will tell you, anytime you're connected to the internet, any machine, it is vulnerable. There is no castle that's impenetrable. So because of that, one of the requirements of the bill is to, one, have that open source so that we take that off the table. No more people going, oh, we don't know what they're doing. They could be cheating or whatever. Nope, you can see it. All the experts can look at it. Stop saying it. It's not going to happen because we're going open source. The second part is to make sure those machines are protected from the internet or cell phones or anything else, so they are unhackable in the sense of what we would call in the military, they would be air gapped. In other words, there would be no connecting ability because that's all shut down for the portion of the election itself, and there's no in or out of that computer from somebody that could. And there's actually a really good a brief at the Las Vegas every year. I believe it has the hacker convention, the white hat convention, and they show there's a video I watched, I believe it's an HBO documentary, it might have been called Kill Chain, and they show them going in with their laptops with Wi-Fi connections, hacking, and then they had real voting machines in there, and they just wanted to see what these hackers could do. They real-time hacked the voting machines by just the Wi-Fi connection. So it's absolutely possible. So what we're trying to do is to get away from, one, the kind of the conspiracy side of things and just show everybody it's here, it's all above board. But secondly, actually protect the data, protect the machines, protect the data. And then when it's over, we'll have somebody, and it's listed in the bill as well, to do that kind of forensic audit is the right word here, or forensic check of the machine before and after the election to ensure, and we're supposed to really be doing that anyways, to ensure the machines are up to date, software is correct, no hacking, no corruption of the data, and that's just how we should do business. But last point, Mr. Chairman, is that what we have discovered is a lot of things are left in policy, or I should say in regulation, to each administration. A part of what the effort of the bill was, in addition with the other body, was to codify into law what we want as the legislature, as opposed to leaving it to each administration, because you could change this administration to administration. So the goal was to make it such that there's no more things left to chance, or as much as we could do. Long answer, Mr. Chairman, because there's a lot behind these, but I hope that at least answers the top line questions.
Senator Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question actually for the Director of the Division of Elections.
Ms. Fanumii, are you available?
Mr. Chairman, yes, this is Gail Fanumii from the Division of Elections.
Good morning. Could you put yourself on the record, and then Senator Wilson has a question.
This is Gail Fanumii, Director, Division of Elections.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Fumii. On July 13th of 2020, the Oversight and Review Unit in the Division of the Department of Administration did a report called the Review and Effectiveness of Security of the Division of Elections in terms of administrations of Alaska's elections. Are you familiar with that report?
I'm familiar on providing that agency with, through the chair, excuse me, Senator Wilson, I'm familiar with providing the agency with with information for that report.
Yes, and have you seen the recommendations of that report?
The report went through so many iterations, I honestly cannot say, excuse me again, through the chair, Senator Wilson, that I have seen the most recent version of that report. I can take a look. I can take a look at it and get back to the committee.
And if I could, Mr. Chair.
Follow up?
And just as of your last iteration of the review that you have seen, does Senate Bill 39 address any of those recommendations or findings in that report?
Through the chair, Senator Wilson, I'm going to have to go back and look at the report and do a comparison with the bill to see if it does address those concerns.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
One more?
Yes, if I just asked that question because that report apparently is embargoed and a lot of it is redacted. And so you have to sign an NDA to see that report because it lists a lot of Alaska's vulnerabilities. And so just asking the director, since she does have that clearance to review that report, if just a simple yes, no on some of those findings would would be very helpful in terms of making sure that this is a good piece of legislation, which I'm sure fixes a lot of those problems, but we just like to verify that.
Thank you. Senator Wilkowski?
Thank you. For the director, do you have any evidence that any of our elections have ever been hacked?
Through the chair, Senator Wilikowski, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. I have not seen evidence that that has occurred. We had hand recounts following the 2020 election, and they did not change the outcome of the election. Perhaps the most prevalent one was a hand recount of the statewide ballot measure number 2. And there was no evidence that any results were changed or the results that were reported, were not reported accurately.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Wilkowski, follow up?
Yeah, just, do you think the state could benefit from having a more secure election system in terms of for example, open source software that's been suggested?
Through the chair, Senator Wilikowski. I don't know enough about open source software to comment on that. You know, there are many factors to take into consideration when putting out a request for proposal for a ballot tabulation system other than just the open source. There are other requirements it needs to meet to be able to handle the state's processes. I mean, I do believe there always is room for improvement in security measures, and I believe that the division is on the lookout for those and is always amenable to making anything to secure our elections even more than they are at this point in time.
Follow up?
And there's been a lot of concern in the press and media, social media about the Dominion election system. My understanding is the state uses that. Have you found any concerns with that system? Or do you have any concerns with that system? Do you believe it's safe and not subject to hacking or not subject to results being changed?
Through the chair, Senator Wilikowski. I have seen no evidence of that. We perform thorough logic and accuracy testing of the systems and functionality testing before and after each election. And our processes, I believe, is, multi-layered levels of checks and balances in place. The state has been using equipment from Dominion or their predecessor since 1998. We do a hand count verification of a randomly drawn precinct that equates for at least 5% of the votes cast in those precincts in the district that use a scanner, and we have never had an issue with those hand recounts that has been set off the alarms or required the division to hand count the entire district. I have a high level of confidence in the system and the people that manage the system here at the Division of Elections and our election workers.
Thank you, Ms. Fanumi, for that. Senator Schauer, did you have a question?
I just wanted to add a couple highlights, Mr. Chair, if I may, for that. Is that okay?
Yep.
Thank you. So regarding the Division of Administration report, that is true. That report has been offered to me after about a year of asking, but I had to sign an NDA to do it, which would have, legal counsel told me would put me at risk if I did talk about it at the wrong time and place, so I decided not to sign that NDA. The problem that was troublesome to me is that report was specifically generated for public consumption so people could see it, and then we would know if we had vulnerabilities and other things. And I know that because on the record I asked the former Department of Administration commissioner who told me those things. And the 3.5 pages of the report that had the 18 recommendations of things we can do better was redacted. So I don't know if this bill actually addresses some or all of those issues. I don't have any way of knowing that at this point in time, although I was informed that there are issues that we are working on that were identified. So I can't tell you that, Mr. Chairman. I just want to put that on the record, that has been a point of contention. I will say on the audit, where the things we do, it's not really a risk limiting or what some people might call a forensic audit. The audit level that we do is basically really we take a small percentage of a district, and we just essentially verify that we had the vote tabulation was equal to the ballots that came out of the machine. What we don't do, and this has been on the record, What we do not do is go further. We don't validate, for example, that the people that are voting are eligible to vote in that audit group that we pull out. We don't cross-check, and we're not, as I have said, 103,000 Alaskans still left as of a couple weeks ago, that we know their data is floating around. And that data is every single piece of information you need, also on the record, to get an online ballot or request an absentee ballot, every single piece of information. So if somebody knows out of those 103,000 people that anybody hasn't voted in years, all they have to do is take that information, request a ballot turned in. We don't verify signatures, which we know we don't do. All we do is a witness signature, and that's it. And we didn't even have a witness signature in 2020 because a judge overrode that piece of election law. So I say these things to say one of the things in the bill is a risk limiting audit. We can talk about that later, but what that does is a slightly deeper dive. And that is a best practice from the federal government, describing it from the Election Assistance Commission on how states should run their election system and look at it. So, for one, not at all am I saying anything that anybody in the Division of Elections is not working hard or doing the right thing or executing the policy. We are trying to point out the areas where we believe there are vulnerabilities that have been identified and things that we can do better. So, and I've not used the fraud word. I get that a lot in the press last year, and that's not what we're saying. We want to identify those areas and do better.
So we all agree that there was no fraud in Alaska state elections in 2020.
There was allegations of that, Mr. Chairman, and I did turn everything that I had that was given to us from individual citizens. We handed that over to the law enforcement, let it go. I don't know what happened. That's out of my lane. So that's all I can tell you on it because I never got anything back and I let it go. Everything that was alleged, I turned it over. So anything they say beyond that, I mean, there is fraud, but the cases I'm aware of, I was told by law enforcement, there's maybe a dozen smaller. There was one or two that were more on the level of a previous person. I don't want to mention names here for cases, but one or two of those. But there's some fraud that happens, but it's minimal, I think, from what I gather. And then the last point, Mr. Chairman, is that there is in both 2019 and 2020 in the Division of Elections where we talk about the question was asked, have we been hacked or, compromised, or was there any, maybe for lack of a better word, malicious activity that took place? Well, the answer to that is yes. We can't say we don't, or we didn't have it because we've been hacked. We've acknowledged that. And that's my point is, and even to this point, and you can ask the director, and I believe she'll acknowledge this because we've asked her before, we don't even have a plan as a state. I'm not saying that in a negative sense, other than there just isn't a plan to do anything to cross-check, even though those people's information is floating around. So when we say that everything is fine and nothing has happened, quite frankly, we can, as a former Secretary of Defense said, we don't know what we don't know because we don't check it. We don't check signature verification to see if it matches. We don't check people's data to guarantee that that is who they said they are and that's where they're at. We don't do those things, and so we can't legitimately claim that all of our vulnerabilities, we've gapped them, we've taken care of them. We can't legitimately really say that we know the election was secure and that people didn't cheat. Why? Because we really don't have any idea. It's not something we do. The point, Mr. Chair, is a lot of the bill is designed to make sure that we can say that and legitimately say it and go, we're there. We track them. We have forensic trail. It's open source. No more questions, no more conspiracies. Restored faith in the system, and then when we say things like, hey, we're good and secure, we've done the best we can do, but there are vulnerabilities.
Okay. Senator Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Fanumi, I'm assuming you've read the proposed legislation. Are you in favor of the bill? Is the Division of Elections in favor of the bill?
Through the chair, Gail Fanumi, Division of Elections, Senator Olson. The division has, we're going to take the direction that the legislature wants the state to move as far as conducting elections, like we always have. It's a pretty major overhaul to the current election process, election system. But if it is the will of the legislature that is the direction they feel the state needs to move, then that is how the Division of Elections will implement elections.
No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Wilson, then Senator Wielechowski.
Thank you. Director Fumi, my understanding was that Senate Bill 39 was amended to add a piece of legislation from the Lieutenant Governor's office. Are you in favor of that addition that was changed in Senate Bill 39?
Could you remind us what that section is, Senator Wilson?
I don't have that section off the top of my, and maybe the bill sponsor and his staff could help with that. But my understanding was that this new version of 39 was a sort of compromise of other pieces of legislation, but maybe Ms. Fumiai can talk about the lieutenant governor's or the governor's piece of legislation if they're in favor about those sections of this piece of.
Or would you mind if we waited till we got to that section in the
yep.
analyses, so we're all tracking on the same wavelength?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. Senator Willikowski, and then Senator Bishop has a question.
Yeah, thank you. I asked if an election had been hacked, and you said, this is for the director. I asked if an election had been hacked, and you said no, but there were hackers that stole voter information. And do we know who those actors were and what happened to that information that was stolen from 100,000 Alaskan voters?
Through the chair, Gail Funumiai, Division of Elections, and I believe is that Senator Wilson or Senator Willikowski?
Willikowski.
Okay. We have been able to identify, and it it was a data exposure. Somebody did access data and of about 103,000 Alaskan voters. We don't know what happened with that information. We've seen no instances within the voter registration system that leads the division to believe there was anything malicious done with that information. It was an unfortunate event and something that I wish it had not happened. But we have not, at this point, we have not seen how that information was taken and maliciously used. There was not that information. There was no information imported back into the system. The loophole in the code was fixed immediately as soon as that was brought to our attention. And I believe there was a federal press release about who they believed the actors were behind that, but I don't have it right in front of me at this point in time.
Could Ms. Funumiai, if that's public information on who the federal government thinks it is, could you forward that to the committee?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I will look for that information.
Thank you. Senator Willikowski, I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you know if there was an attempt to impact the results of the election through this hacking or other hackings?
Through the chair, Senator Willikowski, based on the information that was provided by the federal government, and I know they put something out in March of, I think this year, I will find that document. They have no proof that there was any type of influence into the election based on any foreign actors' involvement. I will find that report and forward it to you also.
Okay, Senator Wilson, and then Senator Schauer would like to make a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Fumiai, this year, wasn't there data that was hacked from another department, and that data was used that could impact voter registration? And as of today, that data dump has not happened to the division yet, but within that future data dump, you could have vulnerabilities in that new data dump that was already testified on the record from another department?
Through the chair, Senator Wilson, I do not have firsthand knowledge as to what you are talking about. So I'm not aware of the issue you're presenting.
Okay.
Thank you. And Senator Olson.
Mr. Chair, if I could follow.
Senator Wilson, follow up.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate because I did go to the Lieutenant Governor's office with that concern that was verified, and my understanding was that they did contact you with this information. So I'm just a little confused.
Mr. Chairman, through the chair, Senator Wilson, I was informed, I did speak to an agency, and I was informed that no such activity took place, that there was nothing that the division should be alarmed about.
Senator Olson, did you have a question? So you've got a comment, then I've got a question back to the bill sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple add-ons to kind of keep up with the litany here. And I want to be clear that again, I know I said it once, but I'll say it again. I'm not making any accusations toward Division of Elections. They got a tough job, a lot going on, including the cyber side, which we have a whole cyber section of the bill for trying to give them more resources to fight the battle, because we're all going to have to do this. This isn't new, and it's not exclusive to DOE. This is just the world we live in today. So I want to be clear on that. But I will say that when we talked to the division director in previous two committees, that with the data that was hacked, it is plausible, she told us that, it is plausible that it could be used. The problem we run into, and that's what I'm trying to highlight here, is that if it was used and we have inactive voters and they were used to get online or absentee ballots, we can say we don't think it happened, but the reality is we don't know. And we don't check it right now. We're relying on, well, we don't think it happened. And the point I'm trying to get across, Mr. Chairman, is that there are a lot of those vulnerabilities here that this bill, these versions of the bills, can help fix to make sure that we can say that with confidence. Because right now, quite frankly, we can say it, but we really don't have confidence because, again, we don't know what we don't know. And I want to highlight that to say, again, this is not accusatory. This is simply acknowledging that we do have vulnerabilities, which I could highlight dozens upon dozens of press releases and articles from 2016 to 2020 telling us how vulnerable the system is, how influenced we are by foreign operatives like Russia and China that were trying to influence operations. And not for 1 second am I saying that it influenced the Alaska election in 2020. I'm saying we don't know what happened, and we know we have data breaches. We know we can do better. That's the goal. Thank you.
You or I don't know if it was a 14-year-old in Timbuktu that hacked this voter registration system, right? I mean, a 14-year-old hacked the Pentagon, was inside there for 6 months. So anyway, my question to you is, I'm trying to get my head wrapped around this open source and in your former career and whatnot, this open source. And now I'm hearing we want to make these proprietary information, these algorithms public. And you know, I don't know a lot about technology, and it would seem to me that when you want to make the algorithms public and open source information, that's just like having the key to the combination at the Fort Knox.
So, Mr. Chairman, two things, if I may, to answer that question. The first one is, again, not an expert, but I know there's a difference. For example, if I say the machine is air-gapped, that's what we would do in the military to make sure that a machine could not be hackable. It would either be in a room, sometimes in a Faraday cage room, that is completely gapped from anything. No wireless signal can come in or out of that. There's no connection port to log into. There's nothing. And then the computers are in there, so we know that they're secure. And if anything's taken, it's taken out in a bag, in a box. That's a Faraday cage of its own, and it's just transported back and forth, an air-gap system. That is something we can actually do with the machines if we can validate that they are all shut down, no Wi-Fi connections, no anything else. If it's all turned off or doesn't exist, that machine can't be hacked because it's air-gapped. That's kind of part one of the answer. The second part of it, when we say public source, and when we get to the next hearing, hopefully, I can get a couple experts to come on board as testimony to explain it. And again, I don't want to get it wrong, but open source, the way it works is everybody can see it. They can go into the code. They can't change the code because they can go in and they'll have access to see it, but they're not going to have access to the machines. They're not going to have any way to go into the machine itself. What's going to happen is the codes that are being used in the machine, the algorithms, the software, will be presented online so everybody can inspect it. Computer experts from all sides, left, right, whatever, will have the opportunity to look and go, yep, that's it. And then we, as the state, are the ones that control the machines. We are the ones that test the machines and make sure it's all correct before and after the election so that there's no question, no conspiracies, no anything. But the people will be able to inspect those software algorithms that are pulled from the machines, if that makes sense. And then we suggest de-identifying the voter data and pushing that as well, because that became another problem of people trying to get that FOIA information of the voter results, not the voter data, but all of the tabulated results. And it took a long time, and often people had a hard time getting it. Many people briefed that they asked for it, couldn't get it, took a month or two or whatever. So we suggest just doing all this right out up front and putting it out there. I hope I explained that. That's how it's supposed to work, but I can certainly get you an IT expert or two that could brief it technically.
When we get to that point, I'll ask some more questions, because in the spirit of time, We haven't even got started on the sectional, and that's fine. We want to ask all our questions here. It's the first bill hearing, and we've all got, have some questions, but I still have some more questions on the integrity of this open source and security and et cetera, because I just got to get it wrapped around my head how it works. So, and I won't belabor that point anymore. So any more questions for the table? And feel free, guys. I'm not trying to hinder the conversation at all. It's a very important topic. And with that being said, I believe we're at a point where we can start our sectional analysis. And we're going to take our time and we'll, if anybody's got questions along the way, I'll just keep monitoring the table and we'll stop and ask questions. We're not going to rush this. And if we don't get done, we don't get done today.
Mr. Chairman, just one comment. I've asked Scott to keep it at a kind of a higher level because it's 65 sections. It's a lot. So we'll be here for a while, but as opposed to reading, just droning on and reading, and you all have copies of it, I've asked him to keep it top level, and if you have a more specific question as required.
And we all have good staff here that have been reading the bill as well. So I'm sure, I know this table, they've got their questions ready.
Hold that closer.
Mr. Ogan, put yourself on the record and please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for your valuable time in considering this measure. My name's Scott Ogan. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor to Senator Mike Shower and been working on this for a number of years. It's been, anyway, I'll get right into it. Section 1 removes language and allows voters to register to vote within 30 days of an election. Section 2 allows an electronic image of a signature to be taken and used. It requires an affidavit in order to, this is about registering the same day, requires an affidavit saying that you indeed live in the district for 30 days prior, and it's under the penalty of perjury. And that penalty of perjury section was added in the Judiciary CS. Section 3 is about languages, designating a language preference for the ballot. Section 4, it allows registering within, on the day of or within 30 days of an election, but you have to vote absentee in person, special needs, or question ballots. Section 5 talks about the voter certificate envelope and giving the voters a choice to register as a partisan or undeclared or as affiliated. The Senate Judiciary deleted the voter's choice to register as a nonpartisan. And Section 6 is stipulates a person who has re-registered may only vote absentee in person, special needs, or question ballots. Section 7 amends 1507-090 to when a person who they have no evidence of registration, they may only vote an absentee in person, special needs, or question ballot. Section 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 are all about voter rolls. The Judiciary CS made some additional database suggestions in Section 12. It also changed a little bit of language in Section 10 to include contacting those who do not live in the state. Section 14 is all about poll watchers who can watch the polls. They have to be a citizen of the United States. And precinct, party committee, party district committee, organization, or organized group, or candidate watcher, and who they represent. The Judiciary CS renames ballot proposition in place of initiative or referendum in that section. Section 15 adds a new paragraph that requires all official ballots contain a watermark, seal, or other security identifier.
Can we talk about that for a second when you're done?
Certainly. And the Judiciary CS adds an election official signature as an identifier.
We had You and I were walking through this the other day in our office, and we had a question mark on here that we might need to take further review of this on the absentee ballots, that maybe for a duplicate ballot, maybe whereas this might need some more work. We were kind of in agreement on that?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if we could maybe highlight from your staff what that question was, and I'll try to answer it where we are now. But, you know, like I said, certainly open to whatever you have for a question.
It was having to do with if, let's just say we got supplies change. I'm trying to remember the conversation, but I had a question mark on this. But if Division of Elections, for whatever reason, I'll use yesterday's news story as an example. Trailer loader mail burned up. Postal Service, right? It's in the paper right now. So in the world we live in with supply chain shortages right now, maybe the Division of Elections doesn't have enough these watermark identifier sample ballots to send back out to the village. So we might need to work around this a little bit, or, you know, for the lack of a better word, we might have to find another fix, you know what I mean,
Mr.
for a
Chairman.
backup.
So, Mr. Chairman, always open, of course. I will say this, and we could we could ask the director an opinion, but, you know, as Gail has said, you know, they'll try to execute what we give them. At the top level of the bill, what we've tried to do is kind of do the old general patent quote: just don't tell your people how to do things, just tell them what to do and let them amaze you with their ingenuity. So our real point is to just give kind of that guidance of direction of, hey, we want this to happen, you figure it out. And you'll notice that it says it could include an electronic ballot, which won't have the problem of what you discussed there. It, contain a watermark, seal, or other security identifier. It could even be the election official's signature. So we leave as many options open there to do, and for the Division of Elections to either do multiple ways of doing it in regulation. They might pick one way that's the best way, or with a backup. I don't really know nor care. And I don't think the director could probably comment at this time, because it's something they would have to war game and figure out the best way. Like I said, Mr. Chairman, totally open if there's a better way or another solution to it. But I believe we're giving them enough wiggle room to be able to create a system that works, just to have that. And there, some of you may remember the term "don't get naggy act" back in the day, and the election with ballots that came in after the postmark date. And so what we're trying to do is, this is a part of ballot tracking, so that we will know where a ballot was when it was logged into the system. So when they show up, it's a part of this overall ballot tracking system, to include anything that shows up after Election Day. We'll know. If it's not postmarked, but it's got the security identifier, and, for example, the watermark or a barcode we'll talk about later, that gives us the confidence that it is, in fact, the one that we sent out. They can verify it, and we will have tracked it and known where it is the entire time, to include showing up after the day of the polls close, because we can still count it. We'll know that. And we even discussed, it's not in here, but something, the security identifier could be like a QR code. I don't have my phone out, but everybody does Alaska Airlines. You know, you got your QR code, you scan them. It could be something. We go there. We discussed, but felt it was too complicated at this point, because we got a lot of pushback with things like multi-factor authentication, because that's being used everywhere you go now. You know, your bank and other things, right? You have a username, a password, you log in, and then they send you a security code to your cell phone or something else, another thing you have to do. So hopefully the bad guy doesn't have both pieces of information and wouldn't be able to hack your system. It's just one more step of security. We suggested as a pilot program, we were saying, let's just see how it goes. And if people like it, because they're already doing it, they just don't understand that when we add it to the election system, they go, oh my gosh, grandma's not going to be able to use it. Well, we didn't require it. But at this point, we pulled it out of the bill just to keep it from being too contentious. So, but if there's other suggestions, Mr. Chair, I'm open to that.
Please continue, Mr. Ogren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I'd like to, you know, there's been stories over the years of various people that, by golly, we found a box of ballots in a trunk of a car, you know. And, you know, if all the ballots are official ballots and make it very difficult for people to counterfeit ballots, I think it's a public confidence thing. You know, politics is the art of managing public perception. Division of Elections isn't a political organization, but it does have a responsibility to manage, and we as policymakers need to manage that public perception. And the public has confidence that there's counterfeit ballots won't be stuffed into some boxes somewhere, and it's happened in this country, in our country, that, I think that'll really up their confidence in the system.
Please
So,
continue.
okay, let's see. 16, it's all about ballot security and chain of custody, incorporating new chain of custody protocols. It also addresses toll-free election offense hotline, and the judiciary CS stipulated that ballot chain of custody document must accompany a ballot or a group of ballots. Section 17 amends 15060 to provide language assistance at polling places. The judiciary CS stipulates the director shall provide each election board with notices about election, where to find the election offense hotline. Section 18, it includes, it's all about question ballot procedures. And additionally, section 19 and 20 fall into that category. Section 21 is about risk limiting audits. Section 22 provides for an online system for tracking absentee ballots. Section 23 requires a return envelope to be postage paid, and the judiciary CS as the envelope may not identify the voter's party affiliation. Section 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28 are all about absentee and absentee and early voting stations. We've changed absentee voting stations to early voting stations.
May I stop there, Mr. Chairman?
Senator Shower?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quote on that, gives Scott a chance to catch his breath and get a drink of water. But this did not come from our office in the original version of the bill. It was a negotiated kind of a position from working with other members down the hall. And still, if you would ask the Division of Elections Director, she would tell you that there is a difference between early and absentee voting as far as how they work. And we're not really, we weren't necessarily opposed to the change. I'm not sure it's required. Quite frankly, I could go back to where it was listed before because the absentee in person is used more in rural Alaska in the bush, and the early voting is used primarily on the road system that those of us live there, we go to the voting station, you vote early. So, but just I wanted that on the record because that's something that was not necessarily a request of ours. I don't feel real strongly about it, but the division of will tell you that it's they were a little confused is not the right word, but wondering why we made that change for what it's worth. I just wanted to put that on the record, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Please continue.
Okay, section 29 allows officials to verify, to check if an address is correct of a voter. Section 30, it deals with voters' eligibility. If it cannot be immediately verified, they shall cast an absentee ballot. If you note on the, I made a star next to some things that were suggested amendments, but that's for future time. Section 31, you can absentee by mail only, limits who can send it, that it can't be filled out, and it's labeled application only. So we had a lot of problems, a lot of reports of people that thought they got ballots, multiple ballots from they didn't know the source. We think it was probably multiple applications, and that's why we want application only, not a ballot on there. Let's see, section 32 is a technical.
Mr. Ogen, could you hold up just for a second?
Yes, sir.
You had talked about an instance, maybe people got several ballots. They assumed they got several ballots, or could they be confused with some of those ballots for a sample ballot sent by Division of Elections?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to answer that one. So under testimony, we had a lot of people say that they had a ballot. So many of those were turned over because some of them, after talking to them, you could tell it was really applications and they weren't really sure. And then others that were quite qualified, and some of them were like 20, a couple of them were 20 and 25-year poll workers, that one of them was a poll director or whatever the position, I forget the name of it is. And so they were not confused about getting ballots. So there was even someone from Huna, actually multiple people from Huna right down the street here, so to speak, and they testified that they saw a person with a briefcase that was asking people if they wanted a ballot, which quite frankly is highly illegal. So I turned all this when I went back an hour ago to law enforcement. I don't know what happened beyond my scope, but there were people that had credible reporting of getting ballots or being offered them, et cetera. I believe most of them, once we talked about it, that people said, I got 7 or 8 ballots. They really got 7 or 8 applications because we allow so many groups to send them. They're getting, and Lieutenant Governor, Director will verify this. People just send ballot applications out, like they're candy. So they get a lot of those, and that's true. And people will still get them for years after they leave the state. That's another problem we're trying to, in this bill, make the state educate people and remind them to unregister if they're not coming back. We had a Maine House of Representatives representative that left 6 years ago. And he's been trying to get the state and the municipality of Anchorage to drop him off the rolls. He's actually got elected when he went there in office. He's a legislator, and he sent me pictures while we were doing this last year. And he's like, look, here they are. Sure enough, there's pictures of his ballot applications. He's like, I don't want it. I'm not asking for it. So we can do better, certainly. But I don't think it's the ballots was the issue as much as it was lots of applications confusing people, if that makes sense, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Please continue, Mr. Ogun.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Scott Ogun, Senator Shower staff. Section 33, I'm sorry, let's go back to 32, amends renames absentee voting stations as early voting stations. And Section 33 requires absentee ballot applications to permit the person to declare an official affiliation, if any. Section 34 eliminates the witness requirement for absentee ballots, and that will be replaced with signature verification. Section 35, if a ballot is received after the election day, it has to have a U.S. postal tracking barcode that was to prove it was mailed on or before the election day. Section 36, this is a permanent absentee provision that allows a person to sign up to get absentee ballots basically in perpetuity. It was amended by Judiciary CS to drop regularly scheduled elections and allow absentee voting for a 4-year period instead of being signed up in perpetuity. So that was a major change in our last version. Section 37 allows early review of certificates and envelopes. The original bill had, or before we amended it, it allowed early counting of absentee ballots on reflection, and we decided to amend that out of the bill because of security concerns with having election results and the associated potential leaks with that. So we dropped that part of it out, but we'll still let people count handle the ballot certificates and the envelopes and make sure, get everything ready to feed the ballots in the machines and hopefully speed up the election results. Section 38 is the signature verification section of the bill, which is a major change because we're dropping the second signature. Section 39 says that in addition to reasons provided under law, an absentee ballot may be rejected if they fail to properly sign it, if it's delivered by mail after Election Day, not postmarked, or does not have the barcode, and it can also be rejected if the certificate is not consistent with the signature on the voter's registration record. This section also removes the basis for rejecting absentee ballots due to a lack of a witness or testing official's signature. It should be noted that the Senate Judiciary Committee approved the no second signature policy. Again, I think I've addressed this before. because it'll be replaced with signature verification technology. And the Division of Elections says they're not going to use the same one that Anchorage uses, that requires human interpretation. They're going to rely more on digital interpretation. Section 40. This is a transition for signature verification. Section 41 allows properly cured ballots to be counted. Section 42 establishes an online ballot tracking system and where voters may cure, and there are some private sector apps that do that. It also establishes cure procedures where a voter whose ballot was rejected due to a defect. And in the Judiciary CS, we gave express authorization for the division to contract with a private contractor for those services. Section 43 is...
Excuse me for a minute, sir.
Yes, sir.
Senator Wilson?
Thank you. Mr. Hogan, I had a couple of questions on the few sections ago on the signature validation or verification. Can you talk about how that would work and how digital signatures, are we going to just sort of have to sign the same way that we sign the envelope, or maintain that, or we're going to store everyone's digital signatures? I'm just trying to figure out how this would all work.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I would like to defer to the director. I think they'd be better qualified to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Ms. Fanumi, are you still with us?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I am. Gail Fanumi from the Division of Elections. Could the senator please repeat his question?
He would, yes.
Yes, thank you. Director, just wondering how signature verification works on the digital, I guess, or analog, or how would collect signatures from all voters in some database, or how would a signature verification or validation work?
Through the chair, Senator Wilson, this would be new ground for the division. However, we do capture signatures in our database. So we already do have signatures captured for voters in the state's voter registration database. I would envision that the process would look similar to what the municipality of Anchorage uses for their election. So there would still be the signature would be captured from, would be clipped from the envelope as it goes through their sorting machine, and then the batch is then sent to the review board. Perhaps, I'm just thinking of this off the cuff, would be sent to the review board then, and the signature from the envelope would pop up, and then the review board would review that against the signatures that the division has stored.
And if I could, Mr. Chair, if I could follow up?
Yes. Yeah, follow.
What would happen if someone uses a different signature? For example, I have several different signatures that I tend to use at different times for different purposes, and that may not all match.
Through the chair, Senator Wilson, I believe that would then be part of what would be done through the cure process.
Could you explain that?
Well, again, through the chair, Senator Wilson, that is, again, new ground for the division, but my assumption would be that a notification would be sent to the voter that the signature they provided did not match a signature in the division's voter registration system, and ask them to supply a new signature.
Thank you.
Any other questions on 42? Go ahead and continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 40 is a signature verification transition. Section 41 allows properly cured ballots to be counted. Section 42 establishes an online ballot tracking system that the voter may cure. Section, and I think it addresses the question that Senator Wilson previously asked. The Judiciary CS amended the section to give the ability for the division to procure a private contractor. Section 43 is it's about change of venue. If there's a change of venue where a person can vote, it grants grounds for an election contest. if there isn't sufficient notice of that change of value or venue. Excuse me. Section 44, it allows the Division of Elections to do all mail elections for certain smaller communities in Alaska, and the judiciary CS reduced the size of those communities, and there has to be a finding that it's not practical for the division to do that, and it's in communities of less than 750 people. And I think that addresses the issue of what was discussed earlier. What if it doesn't work for rural Alaska with some of the new procedures we're putting in. Section 45 requires the Division of Elections to conduct a forensic examination of each precinct tabulator before and after the election, and specifies that these tabulators may not be connected to the internet or cellular network 24 hours before the polls till 14 days after they close. The Judiciary CS allows legislative counsel, appointed subject matter expert, full access to all election data, machines, and systems.
Ms. Fanumi, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
To conduct a forensic audit, do you have that capability in your shop, or is that something that you would go to a third party?
Mr. Chairman, the division does not have that capability. The division would need to get a succinct definition of what is to be included in a forensic audit, because that is, I believe it's a pretty open-ended term, and we are not familiar with that process.
Okay, thank you. Senator Shower?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just add to that. If you go to the next page on F, under that subsection, you'll see that we're acknowledging that many of these things are new provisions, like witness signature, ballot curing, et cetera, that we haven't done before. The division shall provide a technical subject matter expert appointed under the statute, full supervised access to the election data, algorithm, software, et cetera. So we're directing them to do that, which will be a part of the fiscal note, the cost. So Ms. Yelp, the director, is correct, but we are directing that and giving them the authority to do that. So just so it's clear.
Thank you. I just wanted to get it on the record. Please continue.
Okay, thank you, Scott Ogan, Senator Shower staff. Section 46 says that the division can only use open source software technology, and I would say in possible answer to the previous question, open source technology will make it easy for a forensic audit because it's a matter of looking at the algorithms. The Senate Judiciary Committee made conforming changes that the election machines must conform with Election Assistance Commission voluntary voting system guidelines. So they will have to be federally certified before these machines are put in place. Section 47 is more open source language. Section 48 make sure that postage paid return envelopes are not considered a valuable thing being offered as an incentive to vote, which is a crime. And we should probably include a free mobile phone application if the ballot tracking utilizes that. Section 49, Section 51, 52, 53, and 55. No, if you look at that, only goes to 53. Those sections are all changing the criminal code associated with various election violations. Section 50 defines what another valuable thing is in relation to collecting ballots. So that deals with ballot harvesting. We're not banning ballot harvesting, but what we're doing is we are not allowing people to be hired and do it professionally. Section 55 is cybersecurity. 56 is a minimum of $15 an hour. However, we met with the lieutenant governor. He said they're paying more than that now.
Senator Willikowski, excuse me.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing that I've seen happen many times, somebody, and I've had disabled people call up, campaign during election, hey, can you come pick up my ballot, drop it off? If you had a campaign, let's see, if you were the candidate and you went and picked it up and dropped it off for them, would that be illegal? I guess number one. And number two, if you had a campaign staffer that was on like a salary, go and pick up the campaign ballot and drop it off, would that be illegal?
Mr. Chairman, and I apologize, I'm doing a terrible record of putting myself on the record, the Senator Shower.
Yes, and could Senator Willikowski, could we include one more question in that line? of-
Absolutely.
Volunteers,
Okay, so,
unpaid total volunteer.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Shower for the record, which I should have been saying all along, the goal here primarily was to, as Scott said, is to stop bringing people up and training them and paying them to go out and canvass neighborhoods, sit at the grocery store, whatever, and do the ballot harvesting. I say just because of the things we've seen and heard about. A former staffer of mine was actually a part of a group in a governor's election a few years ago. There was over 200 people in the room, and they trained them and paid them to go out and collect ballots. So, I mean, it happens. But what we're trying to do is prevent that from professionals. What we are not trying to do, and quite frankly, we initially started with making it illegal. And so I should address my question, I guess, through the chair, Senator Willikowski and the chair, is that we pared this down because we had a pretty good contentious debate about this for just the pay side. And then we tried to be very specific on everybody else that was excluded from that. So we didn't catch them. For example, one of the amendments, we added mail carriers because we didn't want them to somehow get caught up in this. So my understanding, but I'm going to defer to Scott to back me up on this and perhaps have Ledge Legal on board as well for the intent because they are there, or another lifeline, is that we are excluding all of those groups so that if somebody is just helping someone, a friend, associate, I've looked at the statutes, I'd have to pull them up, then that's still okay. That's legal. So I don't believe it affects them as long as they are not being paid to collect the ballots. And so.
Senator Willikowski?
Yeah. And what's the philosophy behind you? If you've got other security measures in place to verify that, somebody's actually signed it and chain of custody, what's the problem with paying somebody to go and pick up ballots? What's the harm that's being done to society with that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Wilkowski, I think the potential abuse of ballot harvesting is maybe who they target. Maybe they don't, even if we take the identification of what party they're associated with, what's to prevent someone with nefarious intent to, okay, let's go out and target all these Republican super voters or Democratic super voters, and then we'll collect their ballot. Oh, don't worry, we'll just mail it for you. And then they never get mail. They end up in a shredder somewhere. Ballot harvesting is a very controversial area. There's been some recent case law on it. The case law is kind of all over the map, but there's been some that have said it's absolutely, it's not a violation of the First Amendment rights to ban ballot harvesting. There's other jurisdictions that say it is. So we just tried to, again, try to make it harder to cheat, easy to vote. And the metric that we came up with is the best way that we could deal with that. Let's put some sidebars on ballot harvesting and just not have professional ballot harvesters that get paid by the ballot that they harvest, and God forbid that they get paid to or to shred it.
Follow up?
I would think Republicans going out and collecting Republican ballots, and Democrats going out and collecting Democratic ballots, and Libertarians going out and collecting that's just getting more people to vote. If the concern is that they're going to shred it, that's a crime, right? That would be a pretty serious crime if they were collecting ballots and shredding it. So isn't that already addressed?
And to your point, they would be ballot tracking, so we'd know if they were shredded, right? Shower?
Mr. Chairman, Scott Hogan, the ballot tracking that we're putting on is going to mitigate a lot of this concern. And that's another reason why I'm personally more comfortable with allowing ballot harvesting. I mean, and if you have campaign volunteers, you're not paying them directly to do that, and they want to go out and help you out because they believe in you. That's America, man. It's, it's First Amendment stuff. So that's why we didn't go down the route of banning it. Personally, I'd like to see it banned, but that's, we're trying to be reasonable.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, thank you. And through the chair, Senator Shower, try to remember doing that. To Senator Willikowski, I hear your point, and I do think a lot of it is, if this is all enacted, I think most of that will go away. We could probably even strip it out after that. But like I said, we did go into this with the thought process of looking at the accusations and allegations of things. Going, we know people are out harvesting ballots. How well is that being done? Is anybody tracking it? Has there ever been a lawsuit filed? There never has been. Even though we know it happens, there's never been any lawsuit wasn't the right word. Indictments or any law enforcement activity around it. So the question was, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. And so that was our initial thought. But in consultation, again, in negotiations with friends down the hallway, they were adamantly wanted it to be allowed in all circumstances. And so this was, quite frankly, the grand compromise of going, all we're going to ask for in this case is we just don't want people professionally paid to go out canvassing neighborhoods to get ballots. If you look at what's not included, there's a whole list. And we were very careful to try to make sure that included people that you're talking about, Senator, so that, if you had, folks that were going out and collecting from this that weren't getting paid, just volunteers, I think it's included in or the right way to say it, they're not included in that list. So they would not be breaking the law unless we were paying them per ballot, et cetera, kind of a thing. So I hope that, and we may not ultimately agree on that, but that is the compromise of how we ended up here.
Please continue.
Thank you. I think I left off with starting on section 57. It expands legislative council power to contract with the technical.
56. Sorry, we didn't, just go back to that. That's the minimum wage.
All right. Sorry about that. Section 56 increases the minimum compensation to $15 an hour. 57 grants legislative power, the technical subject matter experts to do forensic audits. There's a debate whether or not legislative council is the right place or LBNA. We chose legislative council simply because if they have the authority to litigate against the administration if the council decides to, and they find something that's out of kilter. Section 58.
Senator Shower.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, Scott. I just want to make Senator Shower, for the record. Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a comment on that one because we did have a pretty healthy debate about that. The bottom line is at the end of the day, myself and the other folks we're working with in the body agreed that the legislature needed the ability to be able to look at, if there was allegations of things happening, the authority to be able to both fund and direct some type of an audit or a look at what may be happening. And that came from the fact that personally, I've been asking for over a year for the report that was mentioned by Senator Wilson before, can't get an unredacted copy of it. I talked to the LBNA committee and it was basically told, we're not doing that. So the reality was, we don't think we have the authority or the funding. So the attempt to put this in here is to have the ability in the future for the legislature to at least have the authority. Either committee is fine, either LBNA or Leg Council, but to have the authority to take a look into this statutorily, because basically I was chasing my tail between talking to the Lieutenant Governor's office and members of the committee. So that's what this came from and the reason why. Thank you.
Please continue.
Thank you, Scott Ogan, for the record. Section 58 authorizes the municipal clerk to act as an absentee voting official for an early voting station. Section 59 allows for late registration in municipal elections. Section 60 repeals provisions requiring a notice of rejected absentee ballots be provided to voters within 10 days of certification of the primary election and 30 days of a general election. The section also repeals provision requiring registration for municipal elections to be made 30 days before election. And this is, again, one of those compromise things that got in there that wasn't in our original bill. Section 61, 62, 63, 64, and 65 are all basically effective dates of when different things get enacted.
Questions? Senator, oh man, we got him now. Senator Willikowski and then Senator Wilson.
A couple questions for the director, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay.
Ms. Panumii, you're getting teed up here.
So just a couple scenarios that I've seen occur many, many, many times this year. I brought it up with the bill sponsor when we met in my office to discuss this bill. So people, I'll regularly see going door to door, people who have a house in the district, in my district, for example, and they're registered to vote in another district. What's the division's, is that legal? Should they be registered where they live? What's the law on that? How's that impacted by this bill?
Through the chair, Gail Panumii from the Division of Elections, Senator Willikowski. The voter's residence address is what they have given the division on a voter registration application until they tell us otherwise. And I have Tom Flynn on the line also from the Department of Law if he wants to expound on that. I mean, voters should take they should take responsibility. And when they move, they should change their residence address to the place where they're actually living. We do know people own multiple homes, but the physical residence address, where are you at this time?
I'm not sure what's going on here, folks, or why this is stalled out. Give me a second. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm not sure what's going on here.
By doing that? Someone lives in one district and is registered to vote in another district. Is that a crime?
Through the chair to Senator Willikowski, this is Tom Flynn at the Department of Law. I think Gail stated that accurately, right? The voter's address on voter registration is presumed accurate until the voter says in writing otherwise. And there's a lot of ways that voters' addresses should be updated through the PFD application, through paperwork at the DMV, other voter registration agencies should all capture an update in voter address.
Follow up, Senator Willikowski.
Is it a crime?
Through the chair, Senator Willikowski, no, I don't believe so. There's also a situation where a voter's residence address is a place that they intend to return. So they might be temporarily living somewhere else, and they might intend to return back to that prior address.
And then,
Senator Willikowski.
so a candidate who encourages someone that lives in, a candidate calls up someone who is registered to vote in their district, and the person says, I don't live in the district anymore, I live in another district, but they're still registered to vote in that candidate's district, does the candidate commit a crime by encouraging them to vote in their district?
Through the chair to Senator Walikowski, this is Tom Flynn again. I'd like to go through the crimes in 1556 in more detail before answering that. I mean, if you're intentionally directing someone to vote in a way that you don't think is accurate, some of those statutes might come into play.
Follow up.
If another scenario that I've seen many, many, many times, knock on someone's door, they're a super voter, person answers the door and says, oh, they moved out of state 10 years ago, and yet they're voting from that address every year for 10 years. Is that a crime? Is that fixed by this bill?
Through the chair to Senator Walikowski, this is Tom Flynn again. The one section of this bill that I'm aware of that might address that is there's a section dealing with list maintenance notices sent to people who are, quote, living out of state. The division would have to square that with the ability of voters to have that intent to return. So no, I don't. There's not necessarily a crime there as well, but I'd like to again review the crimes in 1556.
So, I don't know if this is for law or for the division, but is that what's the law on that? Does that seem appropriate to the division that you have? I would venture to guess tens of thousands, if not over 100,000 people in this state of Alaska who are registered to vote at an address that they do not live at and are voting from that address. Tens of thousands live out of state and are voting from those addresses. And I'm not talking military who are, within the requisite provisions of the military. I think this is an enormous problem. Does the division see that as a problem? And are you taking any steps to fix that problem?
Gail Fadumi, through the chair, Senator Walikowski. Again, I think that's a legal question to be addressed by the Department of Law, but the statutes are very clear about if a voter has an intent to return. And also the voter so that is the statute that has been on the books for a long time that gives voters the leeway to perhaps not cancel their registration if they leave. And Tom can probably may be able to expand on that.
Mr. Flynn, do you care to add any more commentary to Ms. Fanumiai's comments, or are you good?
Thank you, Chair Stedman. This is Tom Flynn again to Senator Walikowski. I would just direct you to the statute. It's AS 1505020. That's the rules for determining residence of a voter.
Okay. Senator Walikowski, are you finished with your line of questioning?
I have one other question, Mr. Chair. Just
Then we're going to go to Senator Wilson. Go ahead, Bill. Senator, you can finish it up. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you. So this is a concern I know that's come up in recent elections. Someone gets an absentee ballot, they send it in, they maybe forget, they change their mind, they decide, I want to go vote in person. They're worried about the division getting their ballot. What happens in that situation, and which ballot is counted?
Ms.
Gail
Fanumiai?
Fadumi, through the chair, Gail Fadumi from the Division of Elections, Senator Walikowski. In that situation, the division will have in their possession their absentee by mail ballot. It depends on the timing of when that person actually goes to vote at their polls. There is a point in time, if we have logged that voter's ballot prior to the date the precinct registers are printed, it would say already voted in the precinct register. And if that voter appeared to vote, they would be told they already voted. If they insisted on voting again, they would vote a question ballot. So it would be caught at that point in time. However, if if after the precinct registers had been printed and somebody returned a by-mail ballot and it's logged and it's deemed eligible to be counted, and then they go vote at the polls, we cannot capture that ballot that has been put into the ballot box. So when voter history is done, we run duplicate voter checks, and we would find that that person voted a by-mail ballot, and we would pull that ballot and not count it.
Thank you. Senator Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for the director on physical note, OMB component 21, physical note 4 from Department of Office of Governor, appropriation allocation elections. Just reading through this note, I'm a little confused here because it just looks like you can determine the cost it looks like it states that the initial cost to implement will be $7 million with indeterminate outgoing years, but then you have sort of an estimated outgoing year cost of $5 million to redo the machines. It just seems that when reading the note, it looks like there could be an estimate in outgoing years in the first year. So it looks like the first year will probably be around 7.5, with the second outgoing year around 5-6 million, and then a couple $100,000 or so for each additional year. I'm just trying to get a better cost if they could maybe provide a better cost estimate to the committee in outgoing years. It just seems that they do break down the $7 million. I just want to know what the $7 million will cover in the first year, and maybe some of the outgoing cost of the outgoing years would be helpful.
Thank you.
Through the Gail Tanumii from the Division of Elections, through the chair, Senator Wilson. So that fiscal note was crafted prior to, so the $7 million was incorporating things like signature verification, reprinting of all of the division's envelopes that would need to be identified. We have not yet had the opportunity to determine what all forms would need to be completely reprinted, posters, et cetera. We have an estimate as to what the prepaid postage might cost, but again, it's an estimate. So, and then adding staff to monitor the cure process and monitoring of the hotline. Those were given a ballpark of like $7 million. But I can't, at this point in time, I'm not able to come up with what the ongoing costs associated with that would be. The $5 million was associated with perhaps the procurement of a new voting system, and that was put out there for a future year because the prior bill had that section not going into effect until 2028, I think, or 2026, but then it's been changed to be in effect until 2024.
So it's safe to say these fiscal notes are a moving target until we get a final product.
Mr. Chairman, basically, yes. I mean, until, so we did the best we could to throw together a number, that the division felt could cover what's included in the bill. But until we're able to do a thorough analysis of each form and what needs to be reprinted, a better idea of what signature verification will cost, understanding what the components of the cure process are going to entail, how much staff will need to be involved, and then until you actually go out and issue an RFP, you don't truly know how much you're going to spend on a new system. I based that number on the average, what our current system costs the division. I have heard in previous committees that there have been words spoken to say that a new open source system is about half the cost of our current system, and I until you do an RFP, you really don't know.
Senator Wilson has a follow-up.
Yeah, and I understand that, Mr. Chair. And most physical notes are just educated guesses in terms of expected costs, and obviously we won't know until the system is implemented. But I'm just saying that there seems to be a minimum of $7 million, but it doesn't really state how that $7 million is broken down in the paragraph before that, and just trying to get a better cost analysis of what they do know of the cost estimates in that first year. So the first year cost looks like it's known, but it still says it's indeterminate on the note. I've just seen, and this has nothing to do with this piece of legislation, but it just seems that departments are just getting lazy with physical notes, Mr. Chair. It's just a pet peeve of mine. I just want more explanation in this as to make better decisions as lawmakers on our, this is the Finance Committee, and I just want to make an emphasis on that.
Senator Shower, comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Shower for the record. So I mean, obviously, no argument with the director on this one because I appreciate the fact that there are unknowns, but we did want to throw that out. That is a true statement we've had in previous committees and talking to different vendors just to get an idea ourselves. One that is close to being certified federally said because they're off the shelf and it's all open source, no proprietary, et cetera, that their cost is about half of what the Dominion cost us, which was about $4 million, I believe, 6 years ago. I could be off, and the director could correct that. So, and they have an average life cycle of about 20 years. I would also add for the record, I think this is important. We're not directing any direction we should go with this because, quite frankly, the current vendor we have, Dominion, they could decide tomorrow to just go open source. They have the ability to do that. That's been validated for us. So, and that's where this train, I think, is headed, leaving the station, is trying to get away from proprietary to restore that transparency and faith. So there are other options, and some of them are probably less costly. And it could even be the current vendor we have, which would quite frankly save us money if they would decide to do that, which may happen in the next year or two. So I just want to make sure that that has translated forward from previous committees so that it was on the record. Thank you.
One final question from myself. Ms. Fanumi, when's the last time we updated our voting machines? What year?
Gail Fanumi from the Division of Elections. The division procured new voting equipment in 2019 and used the new tabulators and voting tablets in the 2020 election cycle.
Thank you, Ms. Fanumi. Any further questions from committee members, the bill sponsor, people on the line before we set this bill aside? Seeing none, any closing comments?
I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I just one closing one. First of all, thanks for the folks online and their patience and being here today, and then for the committee members and the questions. Like I said, to the chair, Senator Shower. I did want to comment to Senator Stedman's question earlier because I really didn't think about the answer at the time. He asked about Lieutenant Governor, and he said that there was nothing wrong, and why do we need to do anything? And the director said there's nothing wrong. Why do we need to do anything? I hope we've highlighted some of the whys and the vulnerabilities, but I wanted to add this for the record because I didn't think about it at the time. And if you get the Lieutenant Governor here, if he's willing to come testify or talk to him, certainly he will tell you that while they don't think anything happened, he actually supports this bill. I've talked to him countless times in the last year to couple of years as we're going through this process. They even have another version of governor's bill that's very similar to this, that's almost mirrors what we had in our original bill. And I've talked to him as recently as yesterday. So I want it to be translated correctly that while they don't think anything has happened, for example, he agrees that we have these areas like the automatic voter registration. It's caused all kinds of headaches for the department, and having felons register to vote that shouldn't have, and non-citizens, et cetera. So when they're file for a PFD, get denied later, but yet are registered to vote, and then we don't find out about it because we discovered through discovery that in fact they just accept the data prima facie. So that's something we need to fix. So I just wanted to clarify for the record that while they may not think things have happened, they do acknowledge we have holes and vulnerabilities and things that we should do better. And I think you would find that the Lieutenant Governor would say that he supports the measures that are in this bill, and what we're trying to do is just so that we were fair. But other than that, I think, thank you for the committee's time.
All right, well done. Seeing no further questions, this afternoon's meeting is 1 p.m. It's we're going to have HB 281 operating budget on the table this afternoon's schedule. We are adjourned at 10:40.
Wow, I'm so sorry, everybody. Here I thought that the volume on this had been turned back on so that you could all hear me. I really do apologize about that. I should have checked to make sure that I was live with the voice. I will do a recap on this one more time just so that we're all on the same page. Please like and share this video. Alaskans need to hear the truth about what's going on. I have a poll that has been made for a mock election for Congressman Don Young seat. The poll is operating as an election integrity to see exactly how jungle primaries are going to work this year in Alaska. So pretend that this poll is you actually voting at the voting booth. It takes all 49 candidates that are running for Congress right now. The poll is set up for one vote, one candidate, as the jungle primaries are going to be handled this year. And then they're going to take all the results at the end of May 5th. The poll will close. They will take the top 4 candidates that are voted on at that point, and they will move them into the ranked choice voting, a mock general election. And those top 4 candidates, then you'll get to rank your top 4 1 to 4 in the order of who you would like to see actually holding Congressman Don Young's seat in the interim until the actual election happens. This poll is a sampling of what we are looking at in our upcoming elections, and will also give you a chance to use the new voting system that was voted into Alaska in 2020 during that election cycle. I am really shocked about what the Democrats had to say here today about ballot harvesting. They made it very clear, at least I thought it was made very clear, that their intent for ballot harvesting is something that they want to continue to keep happening. I made a good point during the broadcast in the comments there that this is how Lisa Murkowski had won. They had sent out people into the rural areas and throughout the state of Alaska with ballots with her name already pre-written in, and that is how she won the write-in that year and became our senator of our state. So ballot harvesting, those laws need to be changed and revised so things like that can no longer happen in our state. They claim that they have done an audit on our elections, which when they asked what kind of an audit that they had on our election, it was a sampling. They did nothing more than took one district, said we're going to recount the ballots against the number of votes that were there, and if they match, that was free and fair of any corruption. Nothing happened there. They did nothing further to investigate. They did not go and check and make sure that some of those people that may have voted might have been in an assisted living home and do not have the mental capacity to be able to vote in the first place. They are not able to cast their ballot, but they did anyways. They have no clue if that happened. Yet we're finding out in other states where they are doing these full forensic audits and actually checking the voters and who voted and where they came from, and are they in a mental facility that or an assisted living facility and don't have the mental capacity to vote in the first place. And they have discovered that that is what happened in a lot of different places. This last election, 2020, the big one, basically 20,000 votes in swing states would have been enough to change who is sitting in the Oval Office right now. And they have found over 20,000. But this is all just an opinion. This is not actual fact. Mainstream media won't allow this to be fact. They won't consider it to be fact. They don't want you to actually know the truth. So when it comes right down to it, we don't know if our elections are fair and free here in Alaska. They failed to notify us that 103,000 Alaskans' voters' information was hacked prior to our last election in 2021. In 2020 for the big one there, 103,000 Alaskans' voters' information was hacked, and they didn't notify us of this until after the election was well over with and said, oh, guess what? 103,000 Alaskans' voters' information was hacked, and we don't know if it was used in our election or not, and they still don't know. If they do know, they're not letting us know, because as Senator Schauer pointed out, that the forensic audit that they were supposed to be polling down there for the election that year, the report that came out, you have to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, just to see what is in it. Isn't that ironic? Something that is supposed to be in the public spectrum that we Alaskans should be able to see, we are not allowed to see it, and you have to sign an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, just to see what's inside of that report. Why won't they let us see that report? What are they trying to hide inside of that report that they don't want us to know? Big red flag, big questions. A lot of us have been asking this question for a very long time. Where is that report? Why haven't we seen it? I've live streamed different events where even they were asking the governor why we don't have this. In fact, that particular live stream got me banned from ever live streaming from that group ever again, because the left got unglued with what was coming out inside of that particular stream from that particular group coming out of our own governor's mouth. So here we are, ballot harvesting. The Dems inside of the room in the Senate Finance decided that that's probably what they wanted to have happen. And I do apologize for not having the volume on earlier. Those that have stuck around for this, I appreciate it. I feel like a broken record right now because I'm literally listening to myself repeat the same information twice, even though this is the first time you're rehearing it yourselves. So where was the legislators not in the room? Where's Senator Natasha von Imhoff? Where was, I believe it was Click Bishop. I don't remember seeing him inside of the room. Imhoff was not inside of the room. And I believe it was either Hoffman or Olson. I think Olson was in the room, but Hoffman was missing. So where are those Senate Finance legislators? They had 4 people in there. That's enough to supposedly have a quorum. But without those other 3 being in there, the ones that are always the dissenting voices, the ones that are always making sure that anything positive that would help the majority of Alaskans never gets seen or heard, they were missing from the room. Were they meeting in backroom boiler rooms, discussing with their special interests what they can and can't do, what steps that they need to take to make sure that this bill gets stopped in its tracks? Or were they just sitting there discussing about, wait a minute, you heard all the conjecture about ballot harvesting there. We can't allow that to get changed from the way it is. We would never would have had ballot measure number 2 pass if that happened, possibly. Or Al Gross and Elise Galvin, how are they ever going to win election if they can't have harvesters going door to door helping them fill out their ballots on how they should be voting? That happened too in the 2020 election. So a lot of guesswork going on here, but I need to emphasize from the video I made over the weekend to all of you, the FBI is investigating them in the Senate for pay to play. They are investigating the PFD Corporation and their ties to the Senate and their pay for play. This investigation hasn't stopped. It's still ongoing. It's just not in the mainstream media because mainstream media doesn't have any interest in exposing what is going on down in there in Juneau. That's very obvious by their agenda and what we do get to hear and don't get to hear. The only person that has brought up the investigation going on there since November of last year when it was announced is Must Street, Alaska. They have brought it up a few times already this year, but even they are not pushing it, which is a real shame. So I'm making it a part of my promise to all of you. I'm not stopping making sure that this FBI investigation continues to get exposed and into the light for everybody Alaskan out there to know that it is going on and how corrupt our Senate finance and how corrupt those within the Senate could be, or how corrupt those in the House finance and how corrupt they are in the House Senate or the House completely. We don't know because these investigations are always done behind closed doors, never open to the public to be able to see what is going on. And all we get is little snippets here and there of, hey, don't look at this. But ask yourselves the big questions here. Why is Josh Crest Tompkinson Republican or Josh Compton Democrat inside of the House, who is their majority leader, I believe, the person that at least that goes up and stands up at the end of their floor sessions and gives the synopsis of, say, the budget. And why are these people no longer, why are they no longer running? Why has Senator Natasha von Imhoff made her announcement that she is no longer running in the next year's election to retain her seat there in the Senate? Why? Because these investigations that are going on are going to end up, if they continue, to uncover the pay for play that is going on, which is very evident, especially this Natasha von Imhoff and the Rasmussen Foundation and their pay for play. How could you have someone like her sitting on the Senate Finance, who has chaired the Senate Finance in the past, be on one of the largest for-profit foundations in the state of Alaska? Her foundation, the Rasmussen Foundation, is no different than the Clinton Foundation or the Obama Foundation, which all of them, as soon as they lost their elections and no longer became relevant, like Clinton, closed their foundations down completely, or turned them into just a shell, or changed the foundation's direction to where they're no longer named a foundation, but now they're working for election retention of the Democrat Party, which is like what Obama had done with his. Please like and share this video. I'm sure that YouTube has banned this video already. Anything that has to do with election integrity or making sure elections are fair and free within the state of Alaska or anywhere within the United States, they have made a solid compact vow that they will suppress and ban anything they consider election misinformation. I will not be surprised if they label this video as label misinformation. YouTube is very strict about that, even though that this was a discussion that happened down in Juneau with our legislators in Juneau discussing a bill that they are working to pass that affects each and every Alaskan that will become state law. I'm sure that YouTube will leave this one up, right? Well, if you believe that, I got some oceanfront property to sell you in Arizona, and I have some beachfront property for you to have that's inside of the heart of Alaska, right in the center of all the land that we own. I want to make sure you have that wonderful ocean view. Please buy that property for me if you believe that they are going to not do something. And I say that in regards to YouTube specifically because I had done one of the testimonies for COVID down there, SB 156, COVID freedoms, for being able to discuss do public testimony from us Alaskans to them about a bill that they were passing through that passed almost unanimously through the Senate and is currently sitting in the House, languishing in a dark corner and still has not seen the light of day. So it actually being passed this year is slim to none. That is intentional. They want the bill to die. They don't want us Alaskans, us individual Alaskans, the majority of Alaskans, to ever have a say over what they do. They just want to, if they have another outbreak like they did and they got to have more lockdowns, they want that unfettered control over us and not allow us Alaskans to have any say or voice in the matter. So what did YouTube do? They banned the video. They won't allow the video to be shown. I have disputed the video with YouTube. YouTube came back and says, no, we're not going to allow that video to be seen because it has COVID misinformation in it. And they won't tell me, and they banned the entire video, not just a little piece of it, or if you delete this out of it, we'll allow you to have it up there. No, they banned the entire video as COVID misinformation, which is really sad. And I see them doing the same thing with election integrity. Twitter, surprisingly enough, allowed that video to be played and has not done nothing. Facebook allowed that video to be played and has done nothing, but YouTube didn't. And I'm hard to say what's going to happen with this particular one because it talks about our elections, our integrity in our elections, and election reform. They don't want informed Alaskans knowing the truth. They want us all to be silenced and not hear. You can see up above my head there, I have our website, Politadick.com. Click that support button. All proceeds go right back into making sure we can keep doing this. This coming up weekend, we have an event going on. I can never remember the guy's last name, but his first name is Seth. He has been traveling around the state discussing election integrity and the up and coming election that we're going to have and how and what we need to do, how the election is going to be handled, just like the poll that I have that is posted a couple of posts before this one, where there is a mock election going on. Please vote in that mock election, and please go to the event that's on the top of our page there. Click like on the event. I hope to see you all there. That is this weekend. I do plan on live streaming it, but you won't have an opportunity to ask any questions of those in the room if you don't come to it personally. So I hope that you all do, but I myself am looking at making sure that I can get that information out to all of you. I want to throw out there that for every $200 donation that is made to us here at Politadick, you can receive one of these very, very beautiful Make Alaska Great Again hats. I will ship it to you free for every $200 donation that is made here today, and that includes all colors. We got white, blue, red, navy blue, pink. So please help us out, help us grow. It pays for the services that are streaming this right now to YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook all at the same time. We want to get ourselves streaming also on Rumble, but to be on Rumble, it is a paid for by month contract with them, kind of similar to what Restream is, but theirs is a lot more strict and it limits the amount of viewers that are allowed to be able to see it. But I want to be able to get us onto Rumble so that way we have another audience that is not being censored, banned, or shadow banned, or the reach being suppressed because it doesn't match the agenda that the oligarch big tech companies out there right now are forcing down all of our throats. That's why they're melting down over Musk buying Twitter, because they're afraid of free speech. And now even in Congress, the Biden administration, Peppermint Patty, Pesk, have all declared that now 230 laws need to be reviewed. Now they're concerned about 230 protection. Now they want to see about possibly repealing 230 and turning all of these platforms into just basic publishers, so that way they are forced to follow publisher rules and be responsible for everything that gets posted onto their public platforms, so that they would be liable to be sued. This is how their next steps or intent, I believe, to shut down Twitter is going to come about, because they don't want free speech. They don't want their opinions being challenged. They want us to be silenced so that their speech is the only speech we get to hear, and anybody else's opinions or facts or anything else like that that disputes what they're trying to say can't be seen, which is what's been going on. I find it ironic that the mainstream media out there is now decrying foul, saying, oh man, they're now going to be taking all of our posts and information and making sure people don't see it and it doesn't get and labeling it as fake news or canceling our accounts. This is just not right. This is not free speech. This is not how free speech happens. It's unfair. They're going to target us. Wait a minute. Isn't that what they've been doing to conservatives now for years and years? They shut us down, they target us, they shadow ban us, they destroyed our reach. We no longer are being seen by anybody out there because it doesn't match their agenda or what they classify as free speech. So get ready. Don't be surprised when there is announcements made that the 230 protections are going to be re-looked at. They're going to attempt this before the 2022 elections happen. So that way, if the Republicans, the giant red wave that is unstoppable, that will be happening this year in 2022, and the House and the Senate gets taken back over again 100%, won't be surprised if they get a majority in the Senate of 60 Republican legislators this year. Maybe one less. It all depends on what happens here in Alaska, thanks to Lisa Murkowski and ranked choice voting being the way that we are picking our election winners this year, and the jungle primaries to pick those that make it to the general election, and ranked choice voting. I really don't see us having much of a... I'm really, really leery on whether or not we're going to have a Republican representing us in D.C. and after 2022 is over with for our Senate seat for Murkowski. Either Murkowski's going to win or they're going to slide in like Al Gross or Elise Galvin. Wouldn't be surprised to see either one of them when they lose the Congress seat to move over to the Senate seat, but I don't think they're going to run two campaigns. So that's just kind of a far-fetched example out there, but that gives you an idea. The DC swamp monsters are flooding money into the state to help reelect who they want to have in office, and that obvious pick has been Lisa Murkowski, even though the Republican Party of our state of Alaska has disavowed Murkowski and no longer supports her, and have thrown all their backing in behind Kelly Tshibaka for that election. So that's why this particular bill, this election bill, SB 39, is so important to understand. So please like and share this video. I greatly appreciate that. Go to our website, Politadick.com, click that support button. All proceeds go right back into expanding what we do. And it's people like you exposing what mainstream media doesn't want us to know, and what our Alaska law-breaking legislators don't want us to know, is how we beat them at the game they are playing. Is because we keep ourselves well informed, and we make sure our fellow Alaskans around the state are also kept well informed by liking and sharing videos like this one. You guys all have yourself a great afternoon, and I will see you once again the next time that I am able